see that all the meat and everything was distributed among the populace for their consumption. The Kohanim were able to bring the Aron into its proper place. We'll discuss in a moment what the proper place was. Now here you have the, as you know, the Aron Kodesh was in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, in the Holy of Holies. And no one was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies except the high priest, the Kohen Gadol on Yom HaKippurim. And the penalty for trespass, let us say, was death, whether instant death from heaven, as the Talmud records for us many times, or for breach of the rules. But the penalty was a capital punishment. And it was a severe thing, because people who were unworthy were not allowed to enter. And if they did enter, it's like, well, the best example that I can think of is like someone entering a radioactive area without proper insulating protection on his body. So the person is destroyed. Not because there's anything malicious in the radioactivity. I mean, isn't that they were out to zap it. Nobody shot a radar gun at him. But what happened was that he walked into a contaminated area and he was unprotected. So the Beis HaMikdash, the Kodesh HaKodeshim, had a spiritual radioactivity to it. It had that quality to it. And if one was not worthy, then it was dangerous. It was just simply dangerous to be there. The Talmud tells us that in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, when the office of the Kohen Gadol became a position that was bought and sold, became a political situation subject to graft. So for a long period of time, for decades on end, no Kohen Gadol survived Yom Kippur. So the Kohen Gadol used to go in with a hook on his belt so that they could pull him out. So you'll say, well, how could they get candidates for the job? Well, if you'll think about the presidency of the United States or other such, there always are people who are willing, always people who think they're the exception, or even if they know they're not the exception, but the honor alone is sufficient to entice people, and that's what happened in the with the Kahuna Gedola, with the high priesthood in the second Beis HaMikdash. So here, the problem is, how did the Kohanim carry the ark into the Kodesh HaKodeshim? And the answer was that the danger did not arise until after the Kodesh HaKodeshim was established, naturally. But while this was still part of the process of the dedication, of the construction, so to speak, so then it was allowed. That was a famous idea Rav Kook formulated in his philosophy, which may or may not be correct, but he said that in the building of the Jewish homeland, in the building of the Jewish state, he said when the Holy of Holies was being built, he said any carpenter could walk in, any artisan, the bricklayers, not everybody. The guys that were building it weren't, but when it was being built, so then anybody could build it. Once it was built, then it had the kedusha, it had the holiness that settled therein, and then it responded to different rules. It was the Spirit of God, so to speak, came upon the building, and it was different. So he said that was the example about building Eretz Yisrael in our time. He said, Eretz Yisrael is holy. But while it's being built, anybody, that's the great advantage of while it's being built, anybody can build it. Even those who are not holy, particularly. Once it's built, he says, then it develops again a very delicate stomach. Doesn't suffer people easily anymore. So here they brought it to its place. The Kohanim entered the Holy of Holies, El Dvir Habayim, to the building.
Just a few words that Rabbi Wein Shlita left out in this thing, and because of lack of time, he has to do a whole haftara in 1 hour. When they went down to build the temple, the workers that entered the Kodesh Kadoshim went down inside a box with a small opening on the spot where they had to work, as the Gemara says in Pesachim, Kavav Amud Aleph, Daf 26, Amud Aleph. He doesn't mention either that the first temple, Rav Kook doesn't mention the first temple was built by Betzalel, and the other temples were built by Shlomo Melech, Ezra, and Nehemiah. And even the temple built by Herod the Wicked, he commissioned it and he paid for it. But all the practical aspects he left to the rabbis, as the Gemara tells us, in Baba Basra, Daf Dalet, Amud Aleph.
This place, the Kohanim entered the Holy of Holies, El Dvir Habayis, to the building. The Beis HaMikdash was an enormous courtyard with one large building. So they brought it into that large building, into the palace. El Kodesh HaKadoshim, into the Holy of Holies, El Tachas Kanfei Akruvi. Now, here is another thing that Shlomo did. Shlomo did a few things with the Beis HaMikdash.